Ready?
Okay, 3, 2, 1, and...
Hi, this is Steve Gillmor, and this is the Gillmor Gang, a special pre-Thanksgiving edition. We're trying to get Dick Hardt. Dick Hardt, if you are asleep, then stay asleep. But if you're awake and you can hear this, please get connected here. In the absence of Dick Hardt, that sounds like a cheesy spy novel, doesn't it? In the absence of Dick...
Oh dear.
We may go to a plan B if I can think of one, but I can't because these shows before the holidays are just murder to try and put together. I had a conversation with Arrington. Arrington, if you can hear this, call in from your roadster on the way to wherever you are. So who we do have is joining us. I gather, Kevin, that you've fixed your computer.
I think so. I've got my nice big microphone working instead of the one in the keyboard.
Okay, excellent. That's Kevin Marks of Ribbit. Yeah, and we're going to ask you about that. Your fearless leader seems to have jumped ship.
Seems to have joined your company, yes.
Yes, that's correct.
I hope you enjoy working with him as much as I do.
Yes, well, J.P. Rangaswamy is who we're talking about, and why don't you see if you can get him, wake him up in England, and maybe he can come on. Why don't you do that in the background? Also joining us from Salesforce.com is, and he's editorial director of the Cloud Blog, which means that I report to him, in theory, John Taschek.
Theory is always a great thing. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
Happy Wednesday.
Likewise. And the infamous and irrepressible Robert Scoble joining us from Building 43 Center. And with exhibits, I see. Is this the digital turkey or... Okay, so what, Robert, what are you doing for the holidays? Oh yeah, I can't hear you. That microphone of yours is fantastic.
I had you on mute. Sorry.
We knew
I'm
that.
cooking a turkey.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And Kevin, do they observe Thanksgiving in England?
Not in England, no, but I do it when I'm here, obviously. So.
And how do you feel about that? Are you celebrating? Which side of the table do you sit on? The Indians or the? I'm sorry, the Native Americans.
I'm the fresh off the boat pilgrim, I guess.
Okay.
Come to commune with Silicon Valley.
Excellent. And John, what are you up to?
I'm going to be playing Angry Birds all day with my son, I believe, but also cooking a turkey here at the Taschek household.
So I have something to report, which is that I am now using Twitter applications almost more than anything. I really can't believe it, but in fact, the Twitter app was quite surprising. Chris Messina, or I'll backtrack a little bit. One of the things that happened once I upgraded to iOS 4.2 on my iPad is that it asked me for whether I wanted to. Here's Dick Hardt. Okay, hang on. Just talk amongst yourselves.
Oh.
Robert, are you still playing the Kinect?
Oh yeah.
Or has? All right. So it's lasted at least a week.
I'm gonna have lots of kids over tomorrow, and we're definitely breaking that out. So.
Yeah. Can we come by?
Oh sure, absolutely. I got a lot of wine. I got some Cuban cigars. Come on over.
All right.
And I'll have lots of turkey.
All right. Sounds good.
If I don't mess it up. If I messed it up, we're going to In-N-Out.
Yeah, exactly. The only place that'll be open, Denny's and In-N-Out.
No, there's but I'm going to.
Oh, actually, the Ritz is open. They're cooking.
Okay.
Actually, the backup plan is to go to the Ritz. So they're cooking Thanksgiving dinner for the rich people.
Oh yeah, but you need reservations for that, don't you?
Probably,
no?
But they usually don't let you go homeless if you have $100 in your pocket.
Right.
Do you see those photos taken of the Kinect?
Which ones?
The light, the Kinect shines. The ones they were on Boing Boing here on these ones.
Yeah. There's all sorts of hacking going on. I've seen people do that where they're taking pictures of the lasers that are spraying out from that thing.
Oh, yeah.
To all sorts of fun 3D projects that people are doing.
Send video, Dick. Oh, there you go.
Somebody made a lightsaber that worked, actually. Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, that just shows the kinds of innovation you can have if you let things happen. I'm sure Microsoft doesn't quite enjoy having their drivers open sourced and stuff like that, but if they just be quiet and sit back, they'll.
I think they're starting to get that. I've been more and more impressed with them this week. It was when they hired Steve Coast and signed up to give their images to OpenStreetMap. That was pretty impressive. Did you see that earlier in the week?
Yeah.
That's I think they're finally getting this whole open source isn't the devil thing, which is good. That's a definite win for Microsoft.
Dick, tilt down a little bit and say something.
Okay. Hello.
Okay, that sounds good. Welcome. So I missed all of this happy banter. It's kind of like News Center 5 for a second there.
We were just talking about the Kinect.
Oh, yeah. So is the Kinect going to be Microsoft's salvation?
No, they're not going to make enough money with it. I mean, they're selling 1 million copies between now and Christmas. That's probably a drop on their spreadsheets, right?
Yeah, and they're probably taking a loss on each one too, maybe. But just the they'll get it
yeah.
back
Although
on the games.
I bought 5 games, they're not taking a loss on the games.
Not on the games. No, they'll. That's where they'll. It's the razors and razor blades again, all over again.
Yeah,
but it looks great. I mean, even our CEO likes it. He thinks it's a next generation platform. It's something amazing to watch.
Well, he's usually right, and I agree with him. But I don't think it's going to save them. I just think it's going to make them closer in terms of their stock value. I mean, at some point they're going to run out of things to do with all the money that they have because they really can't buy into this market. What do you think, Dick?
What just happened?
Yeah, I think that they. Everybody's still there?
We're here.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I think that Kinect is a great thing for Microsoft and that it's a cool thing so that people that are working there say, look, here's something cool that we did. It'll help a lot with their perception. So I agree it isn't necessarily going to make a significant difference in their revenue, but I think it makes a significant difference around does Microsoft do cool stuff? And so, positions them as a leader, an innovator, something that you normally don't think about with Microsoft these days as much as you used to.
It's funny though they bought Kinect from an Israeli startup, so even the cool stuff they have to buy.
I think a bunch of that came out of Microsoft Research, though.
Not really. The Kinect itself came out of an Israeli startup, and most of the software was written down in Israel. Microsoft Research is doing lots of interesting stuff. Andy Wilson, I just got a tour of his lab about two months ago, and he's doing really interesting experiments by putting computing surfaces on every surface in a space, and including on your body, so you can hold data in your hand and transfer it to another person by touching them. And that's pretty cool stuff. But the Kinect itself came out of Israel, from what I hear.
Right. It's something, I mean, it's clearly part of Microsoft, and I think, I have a lot of respect for Don Matrick, and he's doing a great job, now that he's president of that division. So, I mean, enables them to attract gaming talent of people who are saying, hey, I want to work on the cool new thing, builds positive momentum around what they're doing in the gaming world.
And when they grow up,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, when they grow up, they can, they can take that that innovation and that learning that they've done in the gaming and move it into the enterprise space. It might take a few years, but they can do that if there's a transition there. Sorry, Robert, go ahead.
You're muted again, Robert.
Sorry, an ecosystem. Sorry about that. I'm a little. I'm on a cold medicine today, so I'm a little goofy. The
we're all just trying to
around the Kinect is really interesting. With all these hackers working on it, it feels a lot like the iPhone did for the first couple months, where we would see hackers do weird things with the accelerometer and the other sensors in the iPhone, and eventually those turned into apps that now are selling millions of copies.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be really interesting if they open it up more so that it becomes more of a generative platform like the PC was versus what the consoles typically have been, where it's a, in order to go and run anything, you have to, pay part of what they're doing. I mean, if they open it up so people can do things that they never expected, could be some pretty amazing innovation out of, essentially something that's just motion around
Yeah.
gesturing and things. Yeah. What else do we
Steve,
have
have
as topic?
right. What's
No,
next?
I'm
I
here. It's
bought
just
one.
we're
I haven't
having some
hooked it up
trouble.
yet. I'm feeling this not part of the game because I've got it sitting there on the shelf and haven't used it yet.
That was great. Kevin,
Yeah.
we're trying to answer you. Sorry. We're having some real technical problems today.
Should we continue on?
It's the internet. Uh, has anybody played with a video conferencing system in it yet?
I have not.
I have with a few people, and it's pretty interesting that it picks up 4 or 5 people sitting in a room with very good audio fidelity because it's using an array microphone, and the camera actually follows around the moving people in the room. And so that's where enterprises. It'll be interesting to see if any enterprises buy Kinects for their conference rooms, both as an entertainment device for after hours, as well as a video conferencing system for their other offices.
I think it will. I mean, because you'd always have, like, just in our company, you have lots of small spaces that need to be taken up in with a conference, and it has to be done quickly. You don't want to organize it through some kind of meeting maker, or you especially don't want to use an Outlook calendar to do it. So you have to gather around in a certain area, and if you can just set something up very quickly to do that, and have a conference, with even with it's within your company, it can be a game changer in that conference market. Now, I would assume Cisco's moving into this space pretty aggressively too. I just don't know what they're doing there. I mean,
Yeah, but Cisco can't sell its video conferencing system for $150.
Yeah, and
don't
I
they?
think the other thing, the key phrase that you mentioned there was, simple to set up. And I think Apple's leading the way on there. I recently was running the FaceTime on my Mac, talking to my wife on FaceTime on her phone, and it was dead simple. You just push the button, and magic happens, and you're talking.
Right.
Yeah, but
It's the classic thing of
Mac
if you're only
isn't
interacting with your own systems, it's a lot easier to be simple. Yeah.
But the
The
Mac's
challenge
not
is
good
for the rest of us
room. It
to
doesn't.
do that.
The Mac. The Mac doesn't have good echo cancellation. Yeah, I still get echoes when I use it in a room situation.
Oh yeah, I mean technically it doesn't
Really?
have as great of features,
Yeah.
but I think it's the ease of use. It just kills ARM, right? And if it doesn't matter how well it works, if you can't get it started, it's impossible. When I've been at some companies and we've been trying to set up some video conferencing, it's tough to try to get it all up and running, right? It's just the hardware sitting there, but no one can really figure out what's the right buttons to push, and there's too many things to try to do.
So what would you recommend to Cisco and Polycom and some of these companies? Build on the Kinect platform, or an Apple platform? Would they, or try to copy it in some way, and try to go into a competitive battle?
Well, you can't build on the Apple platform because, despite Steve Jobs saying so, he hasn't told us how to interoperate with it. I mean, people have reverse engineered the fact that it's standard video and SIP, but the bit that does the translation from your email address to your SIP endpoint is proprietary and owned by Apple, and has not been published, despite Jobs saying he was going to do that. So that's the missing piece.
Yeah, and that could be the Achilles heel for Apple. What I would suggest that someone like Cisco do would be to copy the ease of use that Apple has. How do you just make it dead simple?
Yeah.
That people don't really have to do anything besides click on who they want to speak to, and then they're speaking to them.
Right.
Right. Yeah, that would make sense. And if they can get their costs low, I mean, they have acquired companies in the consumer space, of course, with Pure and the Flip Video guys. I mean, they should be able to assemble some kind of hardware that's pretty easy to use and has a good design. It's well designed, and also they've acquired software companies and they have a ton of cash. Obviously, I think the third most amount of cash in the industry, in the tech industry, and they can acquire some stuff. I mean, I just think that they don't want to the innovators dilemma themselves into taking away from their bigger conference setups. But it would be a great area for them to go. And Polycom is the same. I mean, they're using, it's gigantic TV screens. You have to build a conference room, as Robert had said last week about Cisco. But to make it a lot easier, and I think Polycom does have, small units for one-to-one conversations, but these conversations, multi-level conversations with the peers, is a big thing in the enterprise and the business world. I mean, they just have to happen. Somebody's got to do it. And if it's Microsoft, they have a big leg up.
But again, it's this challenge of interop. Can I talk to the Kinect thing from my Mac? Can I talk to it from my phone? Can I do that, or is it just to another Kinect box?
Right. And what's their stance? It's just being hacked now, right? To open it up.
Well, Robert, you've got the box. Can you call anything that isn't a Kinect box?
Yeah, you could call anybody, any other Xbox, and I think you can call anybody with an MSN Messenger account, but I've never used it for that. I've only tried it with somebody else with another Kinect on the other side.
I wonder if they'll do something with Facebook, and that would be interesting on a consumer level. But then where's that information captured and
yeah, and Microsoft already has Xbox Live, which is like their social system for keeping track of users, and it'll be interesting to see if they ever hook that up to Facebook. But I don't think they feel the need to get hooked up right now.
No, they have to hook up to Facebook or they're toast. I mean, Microsoft is, they've got a good hardware dongle here in Kinect, but they need to patch it into a larger network. I mean, how many people do they have on Xbox 360?
Hundreds of millions, if I remember right.
All playing? I haven't been on it ever.
I don't know. I don't know the numbers right now. But
I don't think the Xbox 360 has hundreds of millions of users.
I think it does. Yeah,
millions.
Well,
but not.
They
hundreds.
sold the units, but are they on the online part of it?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The Xbox and Xbox 360 are two separate things. The Xbox 360 thing, if they can use the controller as a, and then write software to it to control other platforms like Facebook, for example. In other words, you can...
Sorry, as of February 5th, 2010, they said 23 million members.
So it's tens of millions, not hundreds of millions.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So
remember, those are tens of millions of people that have connected their machines, as opposed to the number of Xbox 360s that have been sold. There's challenges for people to try to successfully connect their machine to the network at times.
Well, like for example, that most people don't want to do this. I mean, kids do, but kids have got plenty of other opportunities right now to be able to connect with each other. Most of them are on Facebook.
And kids who've got the Xbox want to play with their friends. That was definitely a high pressure thing for me when we got on. It's like we need to plug it into the internet.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
To the point where they were unplugging.
All right. So let's say there are 26 million or 23 million, right?
Right.
Okay. Then there's 500 million or 600 million, depending on who you believe, that are on Facebook right now. So does Microsoft have a dominant position? No. Do they have a potentially useful position? Yes.
Yeah.
But they have to partner. Are they going to partner with Twitter? Maybe, but they already own part of Facebook.
Well, a small part of Facebook.
Yeah. As of the first quarter, they said 40 million Xbox 360s had been sold.
Again, you mean... Okay.
Yeah. The things you can learn by using Google.
You're not using Bing?
Bing!
Well, I don't think that Microsoft wants to partner with whatever social experiment Google comes up with. And so then the question is are they going to partner with Twitter or Facebook?
Well,
there's already integration in Xbox into Twitter and Facebook.
Say again, I'm sorry.
You can go and publish tweets and do things on Facebook or on Xbox 360.
Right. But if you could actually start, would it detect writing? Would it be a quick way of doing, a smile would become a smiley in terms of
As a
text?
gesture with Kinect and stuff. That would be
I can think
interesting.
of some gestures that would translate rather quickly.
Could you demonstrate some of those for us?
Yeah.
I'm not
I
very
have already on this show.
Yeah, those are the negative gestures. It picks up on those really well
Right.
too.
No, those are positively negative. But the lip reading on Kinect, that would be another problem.
Right. When you talk about the gaming industry, though, I think the bigger challenge is going to be, console games versus the social games, right? There's been this migration of people to playing online, and the social games aren't Facebook or aren't some of the other stuff. There's only, there's a fixed amount of time that everybody has, and how much time are they going to spend on gaming entertainment? And a number of the I don't have specific grasp of the things, but I think that there is more time spent on social games than on all the console games recently.
Oh, I bet that's true. I mean, if you just look at what Zynga's doing and what their market capitalization may be, potentially, those games have nothing. If you look at it from a graphical or a slickness perspective, but the social aspect of them makes them so attractive to so many people that they just are soaring. And if you drive up 101, you see Zynga ads every, I don't know, it seems like every quarter mile or so on the billboards. They're doing pretty well. They're also hiring a lot.
Yeah, well,
And
those ads are recruitment ads, not Play Zynga ads, of course.
yeah, well, some of them are like Frontierville, I guess, is the new one. I don't play any of the games.
Or
But Frontier,
Cityville. There was a Cityville just
Cityville
released.
is a new one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess
Well, I've
they're
got
also
some
for recruitment.
friends working there. They're recruiting hardcore. Yeah, there's definitely a talent shortage for them and some of the other hot startups as they're trying to grab engineers here in the Bay Area.
Yeah, and what kind of people are they attracting? Or go to there? They're not traditional games developers that are writing how you move bits across a screen. They're actually more interested in the social aspect, I assume, right? And those people are attractive everywhere, in businesses and enterprise and consumer spaces. I mean, it's just
A number of the people that I know are people that were, ex-console game world or ex-PC game world, that are, the interactions, there's a lot of people in, product management that understand, how do you, game theory and why people play games and how do you get them to play more games and make it more interesting for them.
yeah, the game theory. I understand that. So if they go into the console type games, then I think that's a step backwards for them, because they could just keep on going the way they're going and still do well. Whereas the console games manufacturers, they have to attract the. I mean, they'll have to. They're probably recruiting Zynga to build on their platforms. I mean, it makes sense for them to do that.
Well, you don't have the social aspects as easily accessible, and they've shown that people don't need the performance. The performance wow that you got out of console, because that was a big driver, is what kind of compute power you had and how realistic you could be. That you got simple 2D kind of 3D like graphics, and people are entertained for hours and hours playing Farmville, and it's not a realistic scenario. What Farmville, it's not trying to do realism.
Right.
It's a game, and people can use their imagination as to what's going on. So it's quite a significant trajectory than the trajectory that consoles went, which was for quite a while compute power to go and give realism, and then the recent trend has been what are the different input methods which you've got with Kinect and with the Wii's, etc. Which sort of changed the game there, but when you look at the cost, gee, if you already have a PC, or now with Frontierville you have an iPhone or something like that, you can play a lot of games. My wife plays Angry Birds a huge amount, sitting beside me, and then she switches over to crossword puzzles. So that to me would be, if I was in a company that was doing console games, would be how do we compete to people essentially just changing to a completely different model around where they spend their time.
Right. I remember when Microsoft first came out with DOS 3.3. I think they had this game in there called, what was it called, Monkey Ball or something like that? I forgot. But it was you basically typed in the numbers of your coordinates, and a monkey threw a banana, much like it looked exactly like Angry Birds in a very, uh, you know, old style computer interface. But it was very addictive, and it got people to play. And now Angry Birds, I mean, my kids play it all the time. I mean, it's impossible to rip that away from them. But that's somewhat computationally intensive compared to Farmville. I mean, Farmville, all the computations are happening in the cloud. And, the others, they're all happening on the processor, like Call of Duty and things like that. It's a very different world.
Yeah, well, I mean, your graphics load, it blows away anything that's happening in flat space like Angry Birds. I mean, that's pretty simple stuff, like orders of magnitude less than a console game.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, Steve, you were talking about Twitter and how you liked it.
I'm having a lot of fun down here. I'm below the desk. Now back to our movie.
Before you disappeared, I mean, you said that you really liked Twitter. I mean, is that a game?
John, I understand that you're trying to get me back on the show.
Yeah.
And now back to our movie.
All right. Well, okay. Well, my game capacity's shot for right now, so somebody else has to talk about games. Robert, what's your favorite game?
I don't play very many games. I'm playing the Kinect because it's more exercise than gaming. But I like watching my kids play Angry Birds. That's my game.
I want to buy a Kinect just for the soccer, because that is
the soccer's pretty cool.
And God, you could have a party if you can get more than a few people playing at the same time. You can have an actual game.
Did you see Crunch Gear a couple days ago? They played videos that people have recorded of themselves hitting each other because they're playing two people next to each other and they're wham.
Yeah. So it'll be the number one cause of injuries in any sport will be Kinect.
I don't doubt it. I feel pretty sore after I play it.
Man, I ripped my ACL up because I was playing Kinect. I mean, it's sad, but it's probably true. All right.
Anyways, what else is there to talk about? Anybody like OS 4.2 or 4.21 if you want to be accurate?
Well, I had the worst experience with the upgrade of that. I mean, it should be bulletproof, right? Isn't Apple's thing? It just works.
Yeah.
I plugged it in to sync, but I use a PC. I wasn't using a Mac, and it installs the new iTunes, makes me reboot. Say fine, just like software, which I hate. And I put it on there, and what does it do? But it's the same one I synced my iPod Touch to, the same computer. But it didn't recognize that it was an iPad versus an iPod Touch. And maybe I'm an idiot here, but it gave me all my iPod Touch games. So they're all the games are here, which my son downloaded, and now they play in that little screen, that little iPod Touch resolution screen.
Yeah.
It didn't delete anything. And then of course I had like 22 updates to install, so I hit the update all, and then like an hour later they're all updated. But that's not an experience that's ideal for me. That's like Windows. I was expecting something much different.
Apple probably assumed that you were one person using all these devices, not your son. And I don't know. I have some of those kinds of issues because I use my iPod, my iPhone, and my iPad on the same computer. And once in a while, apps show up on my iPad that I installed on my iPhone.
Right, that's what's happened here. They should have just like a unique identifier in each device that just keeps everything separate. But it doesn't work. The iTunes part doesn't keep them separated because they're always coming out on my.
I don't know.
I'm having worse problems on the iPhone. I'm having freezing problems, and so are several of my Twitter friends.
What, since you upgraded?
Yeah, especially in email, it'll just freeze the phone, and then the only way you can do anything is to do the 2-button salute to reboot the phone.
That's far more serious than my problem. That's major serious, and you can't blame AT&T on that. That's
No,
actually
no, there's some nasty bugs still in this one that a good percentage of people are hitting. Not everybody's hitting. I'm not hitting it on my iPad, but I don't use email on my iPad all that much yet. So we'll try it out and see if I can get it to happen on my iPad as well. So far, I like it on the iPad. iPhone, I'm having those freezing problems, so it's. I'm probably gonna wait for the 4.3 release. Some people have said wiping the phone and starting over fixes that. Well, I'm not willing to do that. So I have everything grouped, into these nice little groups, and wiping the phone will make all the groups go away, and iTunes will load 600 apps or 379 apps right now, and let them in non-grouped views, and that's what I'm afraid of.
So the grouping doesn't get saved in.
I'm afraid of that because I've wiped my phone before and lost the grouping. So,
well, that should be a profile feature that just is saved somewhere, but apparently it's not.
I don't know. I'm scared of doing it. So.
An interesting thing in the new 4.2 was that they changed the copy beside where you type in your account information. And so instead of it being account, it was Apple ID. Sort of wonder where they're going with that. And in the, I see them playing, trying to deal with identifiers. And when you're using FaceTime on the Mac, it uses your email address as the identifier for how you make a call. So you can call somebody else by email address.
Looks like nobody's listening anymore on the stream because the stream went
stream's
down.
going up now.
Okay. Tina and Steve are underneath the desk, I'm sure, having lots of fun.
No, I'm trying to get through this requester that Ustream is cleverly providing me, telling me that we have an error on the last broadcast. Now it's telling me, but it's a requester that I can't escape from, so I can't get back on. So thank you very much, Ustream.
Well, that's unfortunate. So what do you think about Wozniak saying that Android would take over from the iPhone? I think that's a
well, he came out later and said he never said that. So
really, I didn't.
Yeah, will the real Wozniak please stand up? He also later in the week said that Apple had bought Nuance, and then a few hours later said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I messed up, and I got that one wrong too." So he also reported a problem with his Toyota Prius that I've proven is his problem, not the Prius's problem.
Oh, right, and I think he actually was on Dancing with the Stars, and then denied it later too, right?
No, he was actually on Dancing with the Stars.
Oh, damn! Gotta watch these shows.
I can't say too much yet. He's giving me a tour around the new Computer History Museum in a week, so I better be somewhat nice to him.
Right. Well, you can ask him then. I mean,
I will.
It would be an interesting comment from somebody at former Apple person, to and somebody like that to say Android is going to take over, but I can't imagine him saying it in that way anyway. I mean
yeah, he denied that he actually said it and said that he was totally misquoted. But I'll talk with him. I'll see if he's actually holding an Android phone.
Yeah, I mean that'll be the real test.
He is a phone geek, and he does love having all the different devices. So I'm sure I'll try to interview him about what he thinks actually about Android and iPhone, and see where it goes.
That'd be great. That'd be a good one.
But what else is happening this week? Since Steve sounds like he still is underneath the desk trying to fix something.
No, I'm not trying to fix anything. I'm just trying to
hide.
Listen, since I can't possibly
I don't know.
Join
Twitter
the show.
said they're going into getting into news now.
And then promptly three representatives from Twitter said, "We're not doing that."
Because
not doing
they'd
what?
be in competition with their with their main sources.
No, I think Reuters. I think what Biz is trying to do is signal to the world that hey, Twitter is about news now, and that's a good thing to signal to the world because most of the world still hasn't woken up to that fact. But I think he didn't speak clearly, or he was signaling a little bit too far, and then Twitter came out and said, no, we're not doing our own news network. But I was just over at what does Steve call Flipboard? Flipscan? Or Scam?
Yeah.
Flipscan.
Yeah, you were
I was over at Flipboard yesterday. And I was more interested.
What, were you cheering them on? Were you telling them it was going to be okay that Rock Scam is going to disappear?
No, I was actually interested in how Mike McHugh was going to react to Murdoch, because Murdoch and Twitter are Murdoch and Apple are working on a new newspaper called The Daily for iPads, and that I'm very interested in seeing what Murdoch's up to and how that'll affect the Twitter, for instance, because I'm moving all my news reading over to Twitter. For instance, that last week there was last Friday after the show, Rocky, my producer, was supposed to be here to do a show with Storify, and he couldn't get here. He said, I'm stuck in stop and go traffic, and I'm not going to get to your house. Well, I went to Google News and looked up Devil's Slide because there was something on Devil's Slide that was stopping the traffic. And I went to Yahoo News, and I went to the Half Moon Bay newspaper site, and nothing about the accident was there. But I go to Twitter search, and I search for Half Moon Bay and for Devil Slide, and instantly 5 news reports come up that there's a accident that closed both lanes of the highway. And so Twitter to me is becoming the place I get my news, and anybody on the show is familiar with that. But normal people don't know that, right? They don't. Their behavior hasn't yet changed from Yahoo News or Google News or where or Huffington Post to watching Twitter for news. Anyways, Murdoch is. You're
going to let that go by? Is everybody going to agree with Scoble?
No, I'm not.
Thank you.
No.
Now back under the desk.
I think that Twitter has always been about news. Twitter's always been, depending on how you define news, someone's saying something and that's a new thing, right? So it's a new thing that somebody's doing. But in your example, Robert, Twitter didn't have the news you're looking for. They had, I guess there's probably, you only get so much in 140 characters. And so often the more substantial information is that there's a little bit of a headline and then a link to the real story.
Oh, absolutely.
So
and that was the case with these 5 tweets
but
as well.
That's like saying,
so it's more of a search results. It's not news. It's more of like a news search tool to be able to find out something about that. Like I remember when
when you write something,
when Michael Jackson died, to me that was sort of really highlighted that if you wanted something real time and wanted to know what was really going on, Twitter had much better data than any of the search engines did.
Yeah.
Okay, but that doesn't mean that. I think that the whole 140 character argument is just completely fallacious.
What do you mean? It's a headline. It's not the whole story.
Did you have a real complex discussion with yourself when you first clicked on a document icon?
Where are you going with that, Steve?
Well, when you click on a link to it, how do you look at a blog post? You click on something, right?
Well, usually I'm sitting there looking at TechCrunch, and I'll read a whole half paragraph and decide whether I want to read the rest or not.
Okay, so how did you get to TechCrunch originally?
I type techcrunch.com and hit return.
Okay. Well, for those of us who use more advanced UIs, I think people are used to the idea that there's some text, which some people call a title, some people call it content, some people, whatever, and then there's a link. You click on the link, and there you are in the document.
Right.
So, if you go to the New York Times site, it doesn't have the full post, the information. It has a link and maybe a little bit of a 140 characters or 190 characters of text that says what the article's about.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. We're agreeing, right? It isn't the article. The article isn't in 140 characters. What is in the 140 characters is what's the article about.
Exactly.
So you know whether do I want to look at any more. It's sort of like the headline. At first you skim the headlines like, oh, is that interesting? And if not, then you read like another little chunk of text. And if that's more interesting, then you go further along.
Right, but
It's the promotion. It's the promotion around what you want to read from a select.
The thing that
people.
But
don't get on
it's
the
a
TechCrunch
cultivated,
headline, though,
it's a curated, to use Scoble's term, it's a curated, index into the content.
Yeah.
Right.
The thing that you don't get on TechCrunch, if you just read TechCrunch, is which of those articles does Steve Gillmor tell you to read? And that's why I read Twitter. That's why I read Twitter and why I watch tens of thousands of people, because they signal which headlines are the most interesting for me to actually click on. And I find that signaling behavior to be much more interesting than anything else. But the situation I talked about, you wouldn't have found that on your favorite news page. You would have only found that if you went to search.twitter.com. I went to Google, to the Google search engine, which supposedly has real-time results from Twitter. It had nothing about that accident. And I went to Google News. It had nothing about that accident. And I went other places to see, was I actually missing something? And I actually even did many other searches to try to find, was Twitter really the only place that I could find this news? And it was. And that's a huge shift in our society, that we're now using Twitter for real-time breaking local news in a way that should have been covered by the local newspaper, but isn't. Or
But
the local
this announcement about that BizStone allegedly made about Twitter being a news service, what they're doing is, and it's not particularly concealed at this point, since they now have made clear that they own the stream and they're not going to give it away to anybody. What they're doing is taking the signals that come from the social graph and using it to prioritize items, citations. So, that is inevitably going to be a very powerful signal.
That's not what it sounded like he was doing, though. It sounded like he was creating his own news network, and he'd have editors or whatever that are curating,
I suspect, he was talking to Reuters at the time, and I suspect they paraphrased the usual Twitter is an information network spiel that they spin out now into they're building a thing just like us because that's what we do. That's how I read that.
The way that, that sounds like what Google would say about it, in an attempt to, we're all nice and touchy-feely and it's going to be okay as we steal all the advertising dollars. But, Facebook is being rather blunt about what they're doing with messages. And I think Twitter is saying, hey, guess what? We're going to do the same thing. And
right,
I think they're all going to be successful except for Google at providing a reliable news service. Google News is, I don't use Google News. I also don't use Yahoo. I use TechMeme, and I use Twitter and Facebook and FriendFeed.
Right, but TechMeme only really works for news about our industry. Google News is a bit more general.
Well, there's other news. Yeah. I didn't know that.
I do use Google News. I don't read most of the articles in it, but
hey, that sounds great.
It gives you an idea of what's going on in the world in seconds.
Right, but so does Twitter. Twitter says, it basically says that the people that I'm interested in and the people that those people are interested in together are telling us if there's anything going on, and that's a lot faster than scanning down, Google News.
So I use Facebook for that.
Right.
I'll look at my page on Facebook, and it tells me, sort of more, what are my friends commenting about, what's interesting to them.
Facebook is becoming much more interesting, but the problem with Facebook is that they just won't let the stream back into the flow on Twitter. If they did that, it would instantly become totally useful. If I could post something on Facebook and it went to Twitter, and which is what I do with FriendFeed, which is owned by Facebook. So why don't they just aggregate the service for those of us who want to configure it that way, it would be ideal. Then I would be part of both conversations, and they would be aggregated together into a notification stream, which is what we want.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, I think they've got stuff that'll do that if you post from your fan page, but not as an individual.
Well, what is a fan page anyway? I don't even understand it.
It's a Facebook page of famous people.
If you have over 5,000 people, you get fans. You're a fan.
But, you know, with all due respect to Scoble, so what? Why are they famous, and why do we care? We're talking about, you know, the curation by a social organism. That's what's valuable. You know what? Robert, you have to unmute.
Sorry.
That's all right. What were you trying to say?
Enjoy the mute while it lasts. Facebook pages are just public pages for brands or famous people.
Right. So I would suggest that that's maybe a fifth or less of what is interesting in terms of this rapid, real-time, not trend analysis, but something close to that. Just what important analysis. Getting that into the notification. So I started the show by saying that Twitter is becoming incredibly useful. Once I adopted iOS 4.2, I downloaded all the updates, and one of them was from Twitter, and it immediately asked me, when I booted the program, it asked me whether I wanted to push notification of @mentions and messages. And I said yes. And almost immediately, Chris Messina posted something that said, mentioned, you know, me and JP Rangaswamy, and said that, you know, that there was, you know, it was some comment about the fact that Salesforce is accelerating in terms of its acquisition of talent. And that bubbled up, rang on my iPad. Because it's now a multitasking system, I was able to just go there, and then I was able to, Dave Weiner was mentioned. Somebody posted to Dave Weiner saying, did he think that was interesting? Of course, I'm sure he thought that JP Rangaswamy is interesting, and I also know that he doesn't think that anything that I do is interesting, so he doesn't mention that. But the conversation, I was quickly able to track it, follow it, understand what the signals were. It's an incredible system, and the web pages actually work. You can push a little button and it pops up the web page full, and you know, it's just, they really have
they've done a nice job on the iPad app.
Yeah, and you know, I don't know about the iPhone app, but I'm sure that it has, you know, a number of those interesting characteristics. So that's effectively a poor man's track right now for @mentions, and I think that as we start to fuel the @mention taxonomy, that we're going to start to see some real improvement in terms of this sort of aggregation of everything that's on the network. What are you showing us, Robert?
The new Twitter app on iPad.
Mm-hmm.
What, 27,000 people looks like.
Well, that was one of the interesting things that Defrag was the announcement that they're going to funnel the feeds through GNIP so that you can do track through GNIP. That was definitely
yeah. Although they said 50% of the stream,
but they also said that they
What
do
does
have
that mean?
an @mention stream there, so you can do global @mention modeling.
yeah,
So,
I think that the @mention is going to start to become the sort of middle layer between direct messages and you know, and you know, so-called search or mainstream track.
the sort of tagging model on Facebook where you tag people in photographs and post it to get their attention. That's definitely significant.
Are you guys watching the curation tools like Curated By and Storify? Because I find those are very interesting, and those could add interesting signals back into the stream for people to use to find interesting stuff, especially news.
Because Storify is good at sort of reconstructing the conversation afterwards. I've been impressed with what they've done with that. I haven't played with Curated By, but
Yeah.
I've used Storify and had other people do it with me when I've we've been having some discussion about a conference session or something. Someone's done the Storify thing to pull it back together again and turn that into a post. So yeah, that's the thing. We're starting to see these tools being built to plug these things together. And the activity streams bit for me is making sure that they're not all just built around one side or the other side and can move them back and forth. And I think that's what Steve was saying just now about wanting to be able to move the stuff between Facebook and Twitter and be able to pipe this between systems. And that's certainly an interesting part. And we're starting to see that happen. That was the other piece of the GNIP announcement was that they're already normalizing things from multiple sites into activity streams format. And that their Twitter fire hoses are available in that format too. So it means if you want to write processing stuff, you can do it in that way rather than tying yourself directly to the Twitter format.
What's the end result of that? What is that going to look like in 6 months? If that happens.
Well, it's more a question of there being lots of we're already seeing people tapping into the individual ecosystems. We're seeing lots of apps that are sort of specializing in integrating with Facebook, integrating with Twitter. What I've been seeing over the last few weeks in the business domain, both at Enterprise 2 and at Defrag, was lots of people really believing in this as the sort of future for internal communications within a company. And I'm sure Steve can talk to that about the Salesforce side. But also the problem then becomes, but then you've just built yet another place that you have to go and check because you can't move the stuff between them. And so the value of the activity stream stuff is that we can move stuff between sites. Now in the consumer space, you tend to have some kind of sort of network effect, winner takes all effect, where everyone in a particular field will be using a particular site. In the enterprise space, there's a lot more variety because each company has their own system, but you want to connect that with the other people around. So what I was picking up at Enterprise 2 was that there is much more interest in coupling these different streams from different systems together in that space than in the consumer space, where we'll basically pick one and have that coupled to the world.
And GNIP is focused on the enterprise space or on the consumer space?
GNIP is on the consumer space. GNIP is basically letting you do sort of mass monitoring of public feeds. So they do the gathering and crawling of the feeds, and then let you look for all the mentions of your company, look for discussions around your products, do those kinds of analysis rather than having to write that crawl yourself.
It's basically a software as a service, service for. Taking it's like a partner relationship for Twitter. Yeah. They don't have the time or the desire to
the data reseller.
Right.
Yeah. Didn't they do all the Radiant 6 stuff at one time? I don't know if they still did. Wasn't all
it's
all
possible.
Radiant 6
I mean, they there was a sort of a loose arrangement initially back in the day when Twitter was not being so specific about the fact that they owned the full stream and weren't going to give it to anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but were you not a fan of GNIP at one time, Steve, or you're?
Well, it's all there on TechCrunch if you want to go back and look at it. So I'm going to leave that to. I was a fan
Google.
of anybody breaking the back of the Twitter blockade of track. And I remain such a fan. But I think the reality is that Facebook doesn't seem to want to go quickly into the public stream in any way to challenge what Twitter's doing. I don't think that they feel that there's any real value to that, and it opens them up, I think, to the conversation that Google is trying to have with them. So I think that they're unlikely to do that anytime soon. So we're going to just have to, at least Twitter now works. That's
I haven't had a fail well in a while.
That's been their big effort, certainly. Yeah.
And it's fast too. And the Google real-time search alerts are also very fast. They come in,
they are fast,
30
but
seconds.
Like with the accident, it didn't show up. So why didn't that show up on Google's page for the same search I did on Twitter search?
Which accident?
The accident on Devil's Slide last Friday afternoon, right after the show. It closed both lanes of that road, and it was well covered on Twitter. The answers were on Twitter, but it didn't show up on Google, either on Google's homepage, google.com where I searched, or on Google News.
Did you search on the Google social filter, whatever they call it? There's a one of the right sidebar things is give me the recent results, and that focuses the thing on Twitter.
No, because
The left sidebar, sorry.
I assumed that they would just show up on Google.com because it shows up, But I should have done a better.
Yeah,
search.
no, it's their job to service that, so they're obviously not doing that perfectly. But one of the left sidebar things is the recent stuff, and that will make sure it pulls in the stuff out of the social feeds, and then you'll get the Twitter fire hose they've got, and some of the other ones they've got as well. It tends to be mostly Twitter when you do that.
I understand what you're saying, Robert, about the speed of these different search engines, but I've never thought that search was the value proposition here. The extent to which Google Alerts function as a real-time notification engine for specific keywords, aka track, is its value. The problem with it is that there's no way of, you get an announcement about something and it comes to you first, probably an email. That's when I see it first. And there's no way to reply to it. You have to go back into either Twitter or wherever the citation is coming from. Whoever solves that round trip problem first with scale is going to be a huge winner. And I have, it's I'm glad to be at Salesforce.
Stock's up 5% today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's going to be, I hope, everybody who hasn't already signed up to come to Dreamforce, please do so, because it's going to be they're going
I heard Dreamforce this year is
next
a
week
Neil
or the
Young
week
concert
after?
with a bunch of tech talks.
Well, that would be your perspective. Well, you're going to be over there, dancing with Leo Laporte on stage. So
who do you see being the market for that type of functionality, Steve? That seems like something that's either someone like yourself that's trying to see where you mentioned at, or it's an enterprise trying to track the mentions of their company or their products.
What is the value of social media? I mean,
no, not social media. The
no,
functionality
social
you're talking
media.
about is sort of the search dimensions track.
I'm making a point, Dick.
Okay.
Social media is seeing who's talking about you. That's why people do social media. It's all about that. Technorati was all about who's talking about, what was his name? Technorati. Please help me.
Dave Sifry.
Thank you. I mean, he built that for that very reason. He wanted
built it
to
out of
find
his
out
own
who was
ego,
talking
initially.
about him.
Yes.
And at the time, nobody was telling him. So he built an engine, and it worked. And then Twitter came along, and everybody, started saying things, and then everybody wanted to know whether they were being talked about or to. Once they found out that they were being talked to, they tried to return the call, and, they got the fail whale. And then they took the feature out. So when they put the feature back in, it's going to enable a high bandwidth, semi-public notification system for worldwide communications. So who are the customers for that? Everybody. It's huge. It's the economic backbone of the world.
I don't know. I think a lot of the people aren't that self-centered, aren't wanting to know what are other people mentioning me. Myself, I go to Facebook and I'm not looking for people mentioning me.
Have you ever sat in a Starbucks and watched how people use Facebook?
Yeah.
Tell us. Evidently you have.
I go in there and I look at Facebook at my newsfeed and I see what are my friends doing. I'm wanting to find out what else is happening out there, what's interesting. All
right, let's
what's interesting. You guys are talking about finding what's interesting to look at. I think that's one use.
That is a corollary. If you take these gestures, pardon the expression, and reduce them to their essence, looking for news as it migrates to being a curated environment based on a social graph and an expanding circle of overlapping clouds, as that starts to happen, essentially the information that you're looking for is an output. It's a product of this who's talking about me. If you're not talking about me, okay, the next thing that I'm interested in is what are you talking about that I'm interested in?
Yeah. Or who are you talking about that I'm interested in?
Well, just what or who?
Yeah.
You use who to contour the signal to be able to improve
Yes.
the efficiency and lower the noise of the signal, right?
Right, but or it's also what are people that I've already decided are worth listening to talking about. That's the sort of
Right.
the
And
information
increasingly,
network newswire thing.
that's what most of these services are dealing with now. It's just that first outer ring. But the second ring, which is what are, all the people on this call, what are you guys interested in? I'm much more interested in that than I am in what I think is interesting. I already know what I think is interesting, and I already have whatever pathetic tools available to be able to start to harvest that. I have no idea what you guys are interested in. I have a clue that the percentage of things that you're interested in are going to be more interesting to me than the percentage of things that, John Dvorak is interested in. Actually, I think he actually thinks and is interested in a lot of that. His signals, however, are distorted in favor of creating the illusion that he is a Luddite so that he can get lots of page views. So there is no better method of being able to absorb the network in close to real time. That's what this is all about. So I reject, Dick, your notion that this is all about, what's the word, ego. This is not about ego. This is about the desire to hunt and gather as efficiently as possible so that we are not surprised by the mountain lion that is at the door. Hello?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
one. That's one
This is-
hard metaphor to digest. I just had this
Yeah, I'm trying
process.
to map that one out.
Well,
it sounds
it's
really-
like don't look behind you. You'll see. You'll see who's gaining on you. Who said that? A baseball pitcher from the Negro Leagues. I've forgotten his name all of a sudden. We want to know what we need to know in order to survive. How do we predict what we don't know, or we don't know that we need to know about? We have to come up with some system or service that provides early notification of that which we don't realize that we need to know about as quickly as possible in order to be able to stay competitive, alert, informed, entertained.
Well, I think there's a big difference between the entertainment aspect and the what's useful and you need to know, right?
Okay,
I mean,
explain that. What's the difference?
a lot of people, are, if they're playing a game or they're just interested, they're just reading something. People that are reading, Valleywag, right? It's not necessarily helping them do anything. The only time I ever read Valleywag is whenever I get written in Valleywag, and then I have to go and see, okay, what do they write about me? So then
I love it when
respond
people
when
start
people talk
arguing
about that.
against themselves
But
5
I only
minutes
read
later.
it when I get written about it, right? And someone says, "Hey,
I
you got
understand what
written
you
about
just said. I
Yeah.
don't understand what you said 10 minutes ago.
Yes, you're going back to the earlier one. Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying that that's not a useful part. I just see that as being quite different than, hey, I'd like to go and I've got some time. I want to find what's happening in the world that are the types of things that are interesting to me. And then there's also at times, and I think we are not very good at this, as to what would be useful to me right now. I'm in a particular location or I'm doing something
Okay, so
specific.
unpack
Textually useful data right now.
unpack useful.
Useful, and that if I knew that, it would change my behavior.
Right, and if you knew it fast, it would change your behavior faster.
No, well, I'm about to do something, and if I had a piece of data, it would change what I'm going to do right now.
That's right. But there is no track. It's been, boycotted by the owner of the full stream. So what are you going to do?
No, but track only helps me around when, people are talking about me, as opposed to.
That's where
So let
you're
me give you an
not
example.
getting the expanding
Let me
circles
give you an
model.
example of useful, Steve. If I had.
Okay,
you know-
but I just want to put a
Okay.
little bookmark, which is
Okay.
I don't agree with what you just said.
Which
Now
part?
let's continue building on that.
Okay. So useful to me would be, hey, I'm getting on to the show. Who else is on the show? What have they been doing the last day, week? That I could use. That would be useful data, so I could talk about, hey, but you were just doing this, or I found out that Kevin was at
Defrag.
Defrag and Enterprise 2.0 by him saying it. But that might have been useful for me coming into the show to have known that beforehand.
But you probably do already know that because you are on Twitter and you probably, I don't know about you, but some people still use RSS to aggregate information, and they already know that Kevin was a defrag and that John was a defrag because they posted to that effect.
No, but you're wanting to know it's useful data, and I'm giving you the example of useful. But actually, I find it very hard to get all of that deep useful data rapidly, right? It's not easy. You have to look in a bunch of different
Absolutely.
places.
That's what we're in total agreement. It's not easy to do that. And
But that's the type of useful data. Like just knowing what have all the other people been up to the last little while would be useful and may change, how I would interact and
that's
comment.
why Twitter and Facebook work, is because they feed that need.
Yeah. So I
better
get
than
that.
anything else.
I get that if I go to Kevin's Facebook and I'll see whatever he's put on Facebook, but I don't see what else he's done. Like where has he checked in on Foursquare lately? Unless he decided to go and publish that on Facebook.
Okay, good point.
Yeah.
So what comes next once we accept the thesis that this is useful?
Well, we need to put something together to make it useful.
Right, and that's what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So that we can get the pitch out of the way.
It wasn't a pitch. I just was observing the problem here as we're talking about.
Everything I say is a pitch. So,
But that's, I mean, the point, the thing that I was saying was that lots of people are now caring about this, and you can look at the Facebook messaging announcement as them saying, okay, we want to give you the dashboard that collates things from multiple places. You can look at the Windows Phone announcement as them saying they want to do that. And what I was getting from the enterprisey ones I went to for the last couple of weeks was people saying they want to do that for businesses too. And that's where the standard stuff that we've been talking about for a few years starts to make sense, because we can get these things into fungible form, so we can move this information between sites without them being uniquely bound to one. Now, that was the Tim Berners-Lee post this week, where he was saying his fear for the web is that the stuff all ends up locked inside a single site that you can't link to. And that's exactly that's exactly the point of what we've been working on with activity streams and with the broader identity stuff that Dick has definitely been a part of being able to move stuff between sites without having to buy completely into a single site's point of view.
Okay, well, what I think about these standards efforts.
I don't.
Well, I think I wrote it in a
Show
post
me some
recently.
of those gestures you're thinking of demonstrating with Kinect. that you could just do the gesture and it would turn into a tweet on Twitter.
Well, I think this was a post on TechCrunch last week that said, standards are what happens while we're busy making other plans.
Yes, that was your latest thing. Well, it's true. But the point is that standards are what happens when we see a pattern. When we see several people doing something similar, we say, "Oh, right, there's a pattern here. Can we write down this pattern and share it so the next person to do it doesn't have to make it up from scratch?" And that's the kind of empirical standards work that I'm talking about.
Right, and it's very valuable, and it is also mixed in with market force and
Sure.
and brute buying of attention, and.
Sure.
What comes out of that mix is something that looks a lot like Facebook.
Yeah, sometimes.
All right, so
Out of standards, Facebook, I don't follow that jump.
to me, when Facebook.com, when the email addresses start to proliferate, which, by the way, I would appreciate getting my Facebook email address.
I added you to the system, but they're adding people very slowly.
Yeah. When that becomes available, there's going to be one single sign. I mean, right now, I use Rock Blast to get into the system, and it immediately asks for my Facebook identity. And as you'll see in a post that I'm going to put up on CloudBlog as soon as the show's over, that's 2 clicks. Right? So it's 2 clicks to get into something that includes the whole web, not just the Tim Berners-Lee web, but also the Facebook web.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the identity takedown. That's the lock-in that I choose. Just like I choose the Gmail lock-in at the moment, and probably for some period of time because they've got all of my data for the last 6 years or whatever, however long it's been.
Like
More importantly,
moving your data is easy. It's the identifier that's a lock-in.
the lock-in in Gmail is the filters. I've written about 600 filters this year alone.
Well, but Robert, with all due respect, you have
Share
a
those,
special
Robert?
problem.
I'd love to see your filters.
I think I can actually. But I have to figure out how to do that. I don't know.
I love your phone filter, which is published to the entire universe, and if it rings, pick it up.
Shiny. Pick it up.
It works. It works, but So yeah, I mean, but the filters are only valuable if you have all your data there, which I do.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Okay. And I disagree that it's easy. I mean, I don't want a 75 gigabyte zip file from Facebook or from anybody. What am I going to do with that? I don't want it on my hard drive. The whole point of this is...
That's the hard part. I'm not saying Facebook is easy to move the stuff out of, but for your mail messages out of Google, it's not
the
that
same
hard.
thing. Sure. If you want to set up a server, as I do, to pump everything to IMAP, great. But, so
that's
what?
what I would do. Yeah. So then you've got your data and it's an IMAP and it's somewhere else.
I don't agree with the notion of data portability. I think that I don't want to port it anywhere. I want it to be in multiple places for security purposes and just to make sure that it doesn't, if one of these clouds melts down, there'll be another one which I can recover from. Other than that, I don't want to move anything around. I just want access to everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Agree.
Okay, so my single sign-on right now is rapidly moving toward my Apple ID, which I need in order to be able to throw AirPlay up on my TV from any of my iDevices, and the Facebook ID. Facebook Connect is fantastic.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I think that's a very dangerous direction we're going. It reminds me of Zittrain's book, The Future of the Internet and How to Stop It, and I've been contemplating a post of the future of identity and how to stop it. And that I see, we're moving into, solving some of the near-term identity problems, and Facebook Connect solves some great things. And some of the huge advantages of Facebook is that it maps to real people. It's not, these anonymous or pseudonymous accounts in general. And so the signal to noise, if you go and you accept someone using Facebook Connect to log in, is quite low. You've got a lot of your signal to noise ratio is high. The noise is low. And so, for how do you create an accountable web, by doing things, using the Facebook identity, it's accountable to your Facebook account. And the more you entrench Facebook is into people's lives, the more valuable that account is to you. And so the more cautious you are around doing things that you wouldn't do, say, in public, but you might do online. You won't, we're starting to make it more like the physical world when we're online, when we're using our Facebook account.
Oh, you mean you start being more careful about being an idiot publicly? I mean, I don't understand.
Well, the problem is
I
things
think
start
people are
getting
far
connected
more
without you
idiots
realizing.
online than they are in public, right?
Well, yeah, that's certainly
the kinds
true,
of
but
comments
people are
will say
learning.
to my face,
It's
are very
early
different
yet.
than the comments they'll say on my blog or
Okay,
on something else.
But Dick, there's a big problem with your argument, which is Apple knows how to get me to go through these incredible hoops in order to be able to sync there and sync this and do all these things, because what I really want to do is to be able to be, getting on the train after a day of work, download something on my iPhone, forget my iPad, walk in the door and throw it on my TV.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I know, it's great.
If I could get that
we're
with
solving a whole bunch of the near-term immediate problems by having a very small number of accounts.
That's right. And what happens is that you get these big players, in this case Apple and Facebook and Twitter and some other services that are going to be available shortly, and you've got everything you need, And in the meantime, this fear of the destruction of the web scenario is roundly ignored by most people.
I'm not sure whether you're arguing for or against me.
I'm arguing against you.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying that I laud your concerns, but I don't think that they correspond to an effective strategy to avoid the draconian scenarios that you project.
Well, I haven't even talked about the scenario yet.
You've alluded to it. It's the death of freedom and the web as we know it, according to Tim Berners-Lee.
It's the decline
it's the concentration of it is of it in a few places. The example from this morning was that the UK National Health Service has put Facebook like buttons on their pages, which means when you're browsing health data in the UK, Facebook is getting the feed of which things you're actually looking at. Which is probably wasn't their intention when they did this.
No, and it will probably be legislated, in some way that protects.
There's an early day motion in Parliament.
That's right. Yeah.
So the scenario, the bad scenario that I think will happen as we do that is that the amount of innovation that will happen around moving identity data will decline dramatically.
Oh, but here's that's such a.
Well, we don't have anything now.
Everybody flees to the notion of the suppression of innovation. I don't know how innovative we need to be when Apple and Twitter, for example, and Foursquare and a whole bunch of these, terrible identity thieves are producing. I mean, what are you afraid of?
If
the barrier.
You have to let me go through the scenario.
You've got all the time in the world, as long as you finish in the next 30 seconds.
Well, maybe it's a fairly long topic, but
boil it down.
Right now, we don't have any mechanism to move around any of the rich identity data we have offline, like being able to prove where I'm a resident of, or prove that I fly a particular airline, or that I have a degree somewhere, or how old I am. We don't have any of those mechanisms.
And why do you think that is?
Well, because for a variety of, you're interrupting me. So
yeah, I am. It's called a dialogue. It's a dialogue.
Now, see, I've lost my train of thought, Steve. So
we don't have the ability to move all this data around for some reason that I don't.
The number of people, there's hundreds of organizations or entities that are authoritative about some aspect of me. And the model that we're getting to now is a federation model where you trust either Apple or Facebook or Twitter or say Google, Microsoft, Yahoo. It's a small number of providers, and they have some information that they're authoritative of.
It's a small number because we hate. I do not remember my Yahoo, either my password or my identity.
No.
It could be number. It could be 12 different possible combinations of Steve and Gillmor, right, and I can't get in there anymore. So we always gravitate toward so-called standards.
So I think it's the solution that the current identity systems are solving is a single sign-on, but things become much more interesting when it's not the single sign-on of proving it's you. It's how do I prove something about me? Right? If they don't know the things about me, proving it's me isn't very useful. Right? Knowing it's the same entity coming back isn't useful unless they have some other attributes about me that enables them to do some more interesting things.
Here's a question. Because I'm trying to hand out invites to the new messaging system, I've been adding a lot of people to as so-called friends on my Facebook page, and Facebook steps in and says, "This guy is not really your friend. You're not allowed to add him." And I'm like, how do you know that's not my friend? And it knows because of the interactions we play with people. I mean, we're heading to a
so it's
world
okay
where
that you're not free.
We can prove that you live where you say you live. I can, if you show me your Foursquare data and you've checked in Foursquare enough, I can prove that you live in where the city you live in, and probably even the street you live in. You certainly can prove that with me. And if you look at Twitter's location data, if you turn it on, you certainly can prove that I've been here at this house quite a bit of time.
Yeah, well, let's go back to your Facebook friend question there. You could easily be friends with somebody and Facebook doesn't know it because you've decided not to be friends with them on Facebook. I have a lot of friends that aren't on Facebook or I'm not friends with on Facebook, but I'm still friends with them.
I
Right, I
lost
mean,
you there.
We're going down the friends rat hole again.
Well,
Yeah.
it's not. It's an attribute. There's a lot of data about me that isn't in Facebook, and I choose not to put into Facebook.
Well, that's
And
fine.
so, from an identity point
What's
of
the
view,
problem?
But
well,
is it on the web somewhere? Because your home address probably is on the web somewhere. But my father-in-law
this
never
is my
touched a
point.
computer, and his home address was on the internet. I could find it. Yeah.
if Facebook is my identity provider, then the only
No,
things
no, no.
Facebook
You're
can talk
you're
about are
you're
the
making
things
the
that
mistake.
Facebook knows about.
You're making the mistake of suggesting that Facebook is your identity provider. It is not. It is a massively stable provider, which I choose to use. It's definitely my identity provider at the moment.
Right.
Okay.
And so,
And Twitter is my social graph public provider of the moment. And it sounds like Kinect is going to be my hand waving, game environment of the moment. As soon as I can go down and buy one of these things.
good luck.
But that's
yeah.
the,
No, but
but
the
where
thing
you
is-
see that lock-in there, I just don't see it as lock-in. I see it as, if it's lock-in, it's willing lock-in. I am happy to vote in favor of stable, predictable environments that stand a chance of maintaining their services for a period of time, so that I don't have to waste my time pulling all my data out in search of somebody else who's going to have the same problems with a different, name.
Right. Have you read Zittrain's book?
No.
Okay. Well, I presume that you understood those arguments, and since you haven't, then I either have to explain them or you read it. But he says,
Well,
that
boil them down, because John and I
Sure.
have a meeting in 12
I
seconds
do.
ago.
I have to drop off. So, I'll just drop off quietly.
Good job. I'll see you there in a minute.
Okay.
His concern is that the future of the internet is where we move to more appliances, things are more locked down, but that the reason why there is so much value generation from both the PCs and the internet was that there wasn't control. They were what he calls generative systems, where people can do all kinds of innovation, and there isn't lockdown on that. Now, because of those generative aspects,
But
there's
I
a
don't
lot of-
agree with that there was no lockdown in those models. I think that there was a tremendous amount of lock-in and commitment on the part of people to be locked in to that model.
No, you could buy a PC and you could run anything you wanted onto it. So there was a decoupling.
Now you couldn't run Apple II software on it.
Right. And buying a PC and running anything are
I
completely...
could run somebody, a third or fourth party, could go and create software, and I could go and run it without having to coordinate with
as
the
long
other
as
people.
as long as they followed the the .NET framework or the Unix framework or whatever large multinational corporation was backing whatever their tools were.
I did not, unlike the console market, right, where if I want to ship a game that runs on Xbox, I have to have an agreement with Microsoft. If I wanted to ship software that ran on Windows, I needed no relationship with Microsoft. Yes, I had to have the tools, but Microsoft had no control over whether or not I could write software that ran on Windows, in sharp contrast to writing software that runs on Xbox 360. And
Right,
so,
but Facebook, I can write an app that runs on Facebook without telling Mark Zuckerberg about it.
And if you write
And
an app,
if you don't like it, they'll turn it off.
and this is
right.
the
no
fallacy.
system. It's a controlled
Like they did to
system.
Lame Book this
This
week.
is the fallacy of the Flash argument, which is that for some reason we have to respect Flash because it runs on a number of systems as opposed to HTML5, which doesn't run on anything yet. What about that you write? Well, you know what I'm saying. What about if you write something which runs on Android, runs on iOS, and runs on Windows?
Yeah, it's called HTML5.
Right.
Uh,
So what? So where
So
are
you're
where are
wanting
we?
to
This-
understand
That's your
his
question.
point, and his point is that there's generative systems and systems that aren't generative. And in generative systems, a lot more innovation can happen. If you look
I
at
don't
the
I don't
telephone
agree with the
companies-
thesis. I don't
Okay.
agree with the thesis. I think that there is plenty of value that comes from standards-based development, which you call open. I also think that there is plenty of innovation in some cases, and particularly at the moment, a huge amount of innovation that's coming from so-called closed systems where the carrot is economic.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody sits down who's a brilliant programmer and decides that they want to write something, and they have a choice between writing it for what is largely an open system with some lock-in at the hardware level, or lock-in at the device driver level, or lock-in at the protocol level, or lock-in at the political level, if they tune their strategy to the point where they divide their resources sufficiently to be able to get access to both worlds. I mean, this is what's happening. Is you see that Scoble wrote a really great post the other day, which outlines the fact that, you know, if you look at who is developing what, so much of the innovation and the work is being done on iOS because the audience is there.
Yeah.
And it's so fast moving that those companies that don't start now and aren't in it are going to get lapped by companies which are going to build up ahead of steam and have tremendous clout in this emerging marketplace. It's not about either or. It's about both, as far as I can tell. And, you know, the lock-in that is enjoyed or concealed, in my opinion, by Google, development strategies. You know, there are many things you cannot do in a so-called open environment on the Google platform. I mean, how Google TV, what can you watch on Google TV right now?
Internet TV, YouTube stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Hulu.
Stuff you've already downloaded. Yeah.
Yeah, and YouTube. So, you know, live streaming, you can watch live streaming. That's the one thing that you can do on that platform now that it's hard or
Yeah, but that's because
impossible
it's
to
being
do.
explicitly blocked from watching other stuff by the previous monopolists. You know, that's not an
shocking.
argument.
You know, that's amazing that it's being blocked. Of course it's being blocked. I mean, HBO has, pays for their programming, which is very successful, by maintaining an economic, I don't know what the word would be for it, but I mean, look at the Comcast deal. If the FCC has any kind of leverage at all, we're going to find out if they can, essentially force Comcast to agree to allow their programming to be available on alternate systems. I mean, the Apple TV thing that I'm using, basically there's only one analog hole into it, if you pardon the expression, which is YouTube. If it's on YouTube, I can watch it. This show is on YouTube. It's great. I watched it the other day with Tina. You know, nose hairs and all. It looks great.
So I'm not arguing of open versus controlled. I mean, it's,
good.
The point in Zittrain's argument is there's systems that are generative, which enable people to do innovation. So an example of a non-generative system was the old telephone company where you could not. The only hardware you could plug into your phone jack was something from AT&T.
Yeah, but who broke that door down? It wasn't Google. It was Apple. Apple brought a carrier to the table.
I don't know. This was broken down. This was broken down.
70s. It was
I'm
broken
talking
down
about
by
the
the government.
70s. Yeah. People
You
applied,
think it was
and
broken?
so they started having these speakerphone.
The problem with Zittrain's argument is it's in the past, and
Yeah,
the
that's
PC
what I'm just
was
saying.
a generative system. I agree, but it's not coming back. So we're living with a system where cable companies are controlling our TV on one end, Facebook is controlling our social systems on one end, Apple's controlling our mobile phones on one end, and are we going to expect to see these systems get opened up anytime soon? I don't.
They're going to be. They are being opened up in
I see that
aggregate.
they are being opened up.
In aggregate,
yeah,
they
that's
are.
my point. Is that a lot of these
Slowly
people,
and
it's not that they're a
carefully.
closed system, but they're making sure that they have generative attributes so that they can act in a generative manner.
And I agree with you that there are examples of progress that are coming from that community. My point is that there are more examples, at least in my opinion, coming from companies that are working in concert with each other and at the to the benefit of users who are voting with their feet to fuel that pipeline. And there's nothing that prevents the kind of development that you're suggesting. It's just that if you add it all up, I don't see right now. I mean, I think that in some ways Google has hit a bit of a wall because they don't have, they haven't had the success in moving the needle. I think Google TV is a very interesting indicator of the wall that they come up against at a certain point, which is, that's great. We understand what you're doing. However, you cannot use our content. I can't hear you.
I wasn't saying anything yet because we were talking about identity in Facebook, and so I'm not sure how we got over to Google.
My point is that in order to create content, I have to go through, Typepad, which I hate.
Right.
Primarily because WordPress is an open system, which is infinitely more viral and produces a huge plugin developer community, which makes it impossible for Typepad to keep up. So
right.
I'm arguing your point at that point.
Okay. Well, I'm saying, iOS has taken off because they've made sure there's a number of generative aspects around that platform. Right?
I agree.
It's the barrier for people to get in and build and ship, and even though they've got kind of the gate around what they do, most apps get out there.
That's right.
Easily, right?
You're agreeing with me again.
I'm saying that's a generative model. The problem
so Apple is Zittrain likes Apple?
I don't know. You'd have to ask Zittrain.
Well, you just said that.
I was commenting on why you're saying where the innovation is happening, and my concern around us having a small number of identity providers is that those identity systems aren't being built in a generative manner, and so they're solving a near-term problem, but they're not in a way where you can innovate on top of those.
Are they really not? Because there's a lot of generative aspects to the Facebook system.
Right. The identity system is not generative.
Well, it has some partial generativeness in the way that the iPhone does, the iPhone ecosystem does, in that they provided the ability for people to attach stuff to it and use it elsewhere and plug it into their own websites and do it that way. But
you can use a system, but you can't move any other kind of data in the system.
Oh, yeah. I
what does that
move
mean?
stuff all the time from other apps into Facebook.
No. The identity system.
Well, that's part of the identity system. The kind of whiskey I like, because I clicked on an app and it's moving data from that app and into the Facebook system as part of my identity.
Yeah, there's some very partial support for rel-me binding in Facebook. There's some sort of steps in that direction, but yeah, you're right. Broadly, they haven't done much of that.
I think the core social graph
they
isn't
want to be the
generative.
center. Yeah.
The core social graph isn't really generative, right? You can't take your friends and move them somewhere else and do something with them and then move them back. And
that was the sort of the thing that Google made explicit, and it was obvious with Twitter as well, is that Facebook don't want to do that. It's interesting that they decided to find a way to do it with MySpace. Which says that they clearly don't.
Yeah,
see
but that was just catch up,
all.
and we saw how useful that was for MySpace. Not.
Yeah.
That they were which? That they were.
Well, MySpace can give you what you want, Steve. You can log into your MySpace and post to Facebook and Twitter.
Right, but I don't want to be on MySpace.
The thing about
who
Facebook,
cares?
though, the reason I like its identity system is because it's not generative. It's because Mark Zuckerberg is protecting the friend graph and saying if you're not a real person, you're not getting on the system. If you are adding friends who aren't really your friends, you're not allowed to do that. He keeps me from doing that, right? And so, but that's the power of that identity system because it's pure and clean, where other systems can be perverted by spammers and marketers and other people.
Yeah, you're mixing a few different things up around on what the identity system's doing. But I mean, one of the things is you can't pull your friend data out and take it somewhere else.
But
That's the downside, right? But the upside is
I'm not sure that's
the
the
data
downside.
that's there is clean and is good. Right now I'm inviting people to a holiday party next Tuesday. And by the way, everybody on this show, give me a call. The data in Facebook is cleaner than the data in any other system I use. And I use, LinkedIn, I use Gmail, Google Contacts. A lot of people have moved jobs, like JP Rangaswamy this week moved a job, right? So I have his old email address, but I don't have his new email address in Google yet. Facebook, I'm sure, the minute he starts his new job and gets his new Salesforce email address, he'll change that, right?
Yeah.
There's something about Facebook that keeps us keeping that data clean, because we know all of our friends and family are there, and we want to have the cleanest data there, and it's a social pressure on us to do so, and it's very, very addictive in that.
Yeah,
and,
well, you're just
very
arguing
powerful as an
about the
identity
value
system.
of a monopoly, right? As
Absolutely.
It's take all, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of useful features of a lockdown system, right? The
I know, but
downside is
but
that all
the history.
innovation, most of the innovation has to come from them, and so the
No, but
difference with
that
iOS
was
is
true
it built
when
a
there was.
platform, so people could build a lot of stuff. Facebook built a platform, people built a lot of stuff. But
Yeah,
they haven't
$3 billion
made
companies that were built on top of Facebook. That's not too bad.
Apple proves that if you have a strategy, which Apple does, of providing value in a transformational environment such as where we are, where the media is moving to the edges, and where the ability to be able to construct a filter, if you want to call it, or some way of being able to alert yourself, as we talked about earlier, with maximum speed and social efficiency to incoming information. That's what we are looking for. Now, Apple has developed devices which give me now not everything that I want, but a greater percentage of what I want today. And if I observe the landscape, I mean, we talked before about, Tech Meme. It doesn't have everything, but it has a tremendous amount of the valuable information on a daily basis that I can use to summarize for myself where the other competitors are to the Apple juggernaut. Mm-hmm. And right now, I don't think Amazon has sufficient leverage in the media space to be able to compete directly with Apple. Comcast is in an interesting position, but they have other barriers to entry of their own, namely that they are subservient to a great degree to the HBOs and to the to the Hollywood cartel in terms of the content that fuels their large subscription rates. So they're going to do what they have to do to overcome the Netflix strategy. They are not going to give Netflix access to the windowed, embargoed Hollywood content sufficient for everybody to jump off of the cable or the satellite services. That is not going to happen right now. But over time, Apple, I think, is positioning themselves in an interesting way to be able to, they've got my credit card. Comcast, I guess they have my credit card. They've got, a direct line into our bill paying service. But over time, all of these different services and the various lock-ins that they support are going to look to us on our consoles as one service. And at that point, your concern about the marketplace locking down around, it used to be one provider, Microsoft. We all were against that. But even as we were against that, Microsoft had I didn't want to have 17 different versions of Office. I was glad when AMI Pro was crushed and WordPerfect was crushed. I wanted a better deal. It turned out to be a lock-in for a period of time, but look how that lock-in has started to disappear from Microsoft.
Right. So I'm
But
not
that's
arguing.
because we have a generative alternative. You know, we
Yeah,
now have
yeah.
a document format that isn't under their control.
That's right,
It's
and
called
it's not going
HTML,
to go.
The rest of the world is built in that.
It's not going to go away. But if you look at what's happening with Google and Google TV, for example, there are limits to how innovative this generative environment really are. It's not as powerful, and it's not moving the ball forward as relentlessly as what Apple's doing. It's contributing to
No.
it, but
It's-
Apple.
No. You're saying Apple, the iOS is a generative platform, right? You're
No, you said that,
conflating
and I
locked
totally
in
agree with you.
Generative, and they're not the same thing.
No,
you
no,
may be locked in one way. Like Windows
took
was
me-
a great platform.
It took me 2 hours to be able to update all of my devices, and I'm still not done.
Right.
Don't tell me about
And wait till you try and get it to print. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not even
which
going to
thing?
try. Why? I don't need to print. I've got it sitting here on a big electronic page. When they moved to OS 10 and reinserted Next OS, aka Unix, and then moved to Intel chips, they harnessed the marketplace to their advantage, and also this generative. I don't know where the root of that is. Velocity. We agree on that. Okay. Beyond that, however, I agree with Scoble, which is that we are now living in a time where both of these systems are active. And of the two,
What's the other system?
Google TV. Now, I didn't buy Google TV, and I haven't given Google any of my social information. Just haven't done it.
Right. But what? I'm confused on what you're saying are the two. My
There's
point is
Apple-
that innovation
Apple
in
and
general only
Facebook-
happens. Innovation in general only happens in a generative environment.
So you're saying that somehow this is once generative exists, it subsumes. I don't understand. Every time I talk to you about the so-called closed systems,
Dick, are you saying that all the apps or all the systems that have built interesting new features on Facebook aren't innovation? Because they're not
No,
built
I'm
on
not saying that.
a
No.
generation. Well, you just said that no innovation. That was a pretty strong stance.
Okay.
If you say
So-
less
so-
innovation is possible,
Let me clarify, because I think the Facebook platform was generative. The Facebook identity system, I don't see it having generative aspects in it currently.
and you don't see any innovation being done on top of the identity system that Facebook has put forth.
No,
Really interesting.
no.
So you
I
don't
see an
see
awful lot of innovation
Rockmelt
on the
as
platform. Huge
you
innovation.
don't see Rockmelt's ability to sign in and know everything about me as innovation.
That's a platform feature. It's an API call.
It's also mostly
but to the
about
user,
identity. Though.
to the user. I mean, I think Rockmelt is bizarre, but I love it. The reason I love it is it signs me into Facebook, and anytime that I want to use Facebook Connect, I'm already signed in.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right,
so
I mean,
if I want
And-
to if
and
I
it's
want to
a
log
figure as
into Typepad, God help me, which I have to do at the moment on CloudBlog, I click that. I click the little Facebook Connect button. I'm in. I don't have to remember what I wrote before. I don't have to remember what my name is. And every time I try and remember it, it kicks it back to me and says, no, you're not allowed in. So,
Right. So how do you go and give a verified claim of your Gmail address using Facebook? I mean, you can't do that.
but
what do you
inside
mean?
Rockmelt,
asks you to,
I don't care about
it
that.
asks you to send an email to yourself and click on
who
that
does?
link and authenticate that email address, right?
Which thing? So Facebook knows it, but say you go to some other site and you'd like to give them an email address and they'd like to have it be a verified email address.
Well, that's really Gmail's problem at this point, I think.
But I've done that several times over the web. The web has a good way of understanding that you're using an email address. Now, whether it's Robert Scoble's email address, only Robert Scoble knows that, right?
Well,
Well,
that's
no,
there's
Gmail
ways of
knows whether
verifying
it's
it.
your address as well.
Well,
mean,
not
Gmail
really.
knows who
could
I
sign
am
up for
because-
another email address right now, and
Sure.
does
I mean,
Google
No,
really
but
know that's
Gmail,
Robert
you can
Scoble's?
prove with Gmail that a particular address belongs to you.
Yeah.
But now we're in the weeds about this, this whole identity
Well-
as email address.
Well, I'm
scenario.
trying to give an example that's concrete around the type of innovation that we can't do around this. And then, to me, and the being an identity guy, the interesting things are when I'm able to move claims from other people, things that other people, other organizations, entities say about me, when I'm able to go and share those at a place. So with Facebook,
Here's an example. There's I think 11 Bill Gateses on Facebook, and if you hid the name Bill Gates from me and the photo and all the information on that, I could still pick out the real one because I know who Bill Gates's real life friends are, and I can look at the social graph associated with each of those accounts and know which one is the real Bill Gates.
Okay.
I've done that actually.
All right. I'm calling this one on account of rain.
Okay.
The fact is that this is simpler than you are discussing. When I log on, when I click on the rock melt button, it comes up if I'm not already logged in, it says, it gives me a Facebook Connect requester essentially. It may not be Facebook Connect, it may be its own connector, but they seem to be playing ball with Facebook. I click on that, I'm in. If I have anything else that talks to that system, it works. Maybe 2 clicks, I'm in. Right?
Yeah.
Eventually they will automate that so that I don't have to do any 2 clicks. It'll just be I'm part of this big happy family. Then there's Apple ID. As long as I sign in with all of my devices to Apple ID, I can look at my stuff on any of the screens in my house, including Apple TV. That is 3 screens in the cloud that Microsoft talks about, but I got it today and it works. Right? It's kind of fun. It works.
You borrow your screens from Apple, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I don't, I don't see the value of the Android suite of services. Essentially, if Google Voice now works on the iPhone, and then I'm done. What else do they have that's so compelling with all of their openness? I'm thrilled that there's competition for Apple because it pushes Apple forward, and it also pushes the carriers forward to unbundle the kinds of services that they no longer can lock up, like SMS, etc. So we're moving rapidly as a result of there being more than one of these players. But the fundamental danger of Facebook and Apple owning various pieces of my identity, in my opinion, is zero, because there are other players who are attacking this model. The only scenario that I think you have a case for is that they become so powerful that they lock out everybody else. I don't believe that that's ever going to happen.
Well, I mean, we have precedents
so-
for it. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
If
we
I
don't
could-
have precedent for it. Not on the network.
No,
In
we've
the
got
age
some
of
precedent
Microsoft, we
lock-in.
did.
I mean, look at the lack of innovation. When someone has a monopoly and has lock-in, then they tend to not do any innovation anymore. And it's the fear that we'll have a lack of innovation and forward progress. It's my concern.
I understand that,
Right.
and it's
So
less
look at
of my
look at
concern.
the carriers, the mobile carriers, right? They've had lots of opportunity to innovate, and they haven't done much innovation. Most innovations happened outside of the carriers, and then came in. They could have done the iPhone, but they didn't.
Okay, we'll see what happens. I'll be dead before you're right. And probably so will you.
I'll have to gather my thoughts so I can present my argument more
Well,
clearly at some point.
I knew that if I could get you to actually answer your Skype. By the way, this is being brought to you by the Generative Network. Although last I looked, Skype is actually making money and is looking an awful lot like an elephant or a gorilla. Okay, I want to thank Rackspace and particularly Rob Legess for bringing this show back to the air, whatever air we're on.
The Bitstream.
I also want to point out that in honor of the holidays, go to Cafe Press and get your Gillmor Gang mugs, your Gillmor Gang shirts, your Gillmor Gang vibrators, and so on.
Teddy bears.
Yeah, and that's what I meant by the vibrator. The thing moves.
Vibrating teddy bear. That's disturbing.
Thank you.
It's really disturbing.
Well, we started with in the absence of Dick, so everything comes full circle.
Yeah.
I want to thank New Tech on their TriCaster for making this video. I want to thank Apple for locking me into their incredible platform. I want to thank Facebook for locking my identity in to its incredible platform. I want to thank Dick Hardt for trying to save me from myself. I want to thank Robert Scoble for being Robert Scoble. I want to thank John Taschek for taking that meeting without me. I want to thank Kevin Marks for still working for Ribbit. And I want to thank our producer and director, Tina Chase. I want to thank everybody who showed up, and especially those who remain vigilant in not joining us. Bye-bye.